Good evening.
The sound coming through?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So let's start. This is meeting 3. Let me talk about the agenda for today. You had 2 assignments, one individual, one group assignment, which are due by now. We'll grade the individual assignment over the weekend. So by next meeting, you will get your scores, you will get your feedback on the companies you selected. So that's all part of the process. So that's coming up. For the group case, obviously, we will have a discussion in class today. So one comment, I did receive a few requests to give you a little bit more time on individual project. And that's generally might be okay. I can give you another day, even 2. On group projects, that's not possible because we will discuss it, okay, in class. So when you work on your assignments, make sure that your group assignment is complete before we meet on Thursday, okay? So for individual, there is some flexibility for individual assignments, but not for groups. So make sure this is clear. All right. So we'll do the case discussion. I'll finish up a few things about the project analysis, and I'll start referring to your final project, your individual project, which will be due in week 8. And that substitutes your final exam. That will be the same company that you selected for the first part. Again, some flexibility. If you get stuck with something, you can replace it, but ideally you continue with the same company and complete the evaluation of the company. I will give you a very detailed assignment with what you need to accomplish. But as we go through the course, starting literally today, I will start pointing out things we do in class, which I will expect you to apply for your company analysis in your final project. Okay. And some of it, I will come back to the example I walked through last week with the project analysis. I will add a few details there, something called, I didn't get to this last time. I just want to make sure we finish the project analysis template. But a few things that professionals typically do, something called the sensitivity analysis and scenario analysis. Some of you are familiar with this. But I will walk through, I will demonstrate it in class. And that's something I will expect you to complete for your individual project, okay? I added a short video on scenario and sensitivity analysis. I added it to last week's materials, so that is available, and that's something I will refer to today, okay? So that will wrap up the template, the free cash flow calculation template. We will use it going forward with some adjustments for company valuation. But before we get to the company valuation, I'll start talking today about the cost of capital in more details. I gave you the introduction last week, and I wanted you to do the beta regression for your individual company. So I already covered that part, but I will expand. That's a big part in corporate finance, okay? Something that we will do very extensively in some details. So I will add those details starting today. And your next assignment, your group assignment for next week, will be on the cost of capital, on the denominator in our equation, okay? So that's, again, you'll see how this works today with the case analysis. Similar approach. You get together as a group, you read the case, you have a set of questions, you address those questions the best you can, you submit your report, you show up in class next week, we'll discuss it, and then you owe me a 1-page summary on the case discussion. So for the first case, for today's case, I expect you to send me that 1-page summary, and if you need to recalculate anything in Excel, the same will be by the end of Saturday, so 2 days from today. And I had a question.
Yeah, sorry, I just, it's not clear for me about sensitivity analysis that we should do for individual project, right? It's for 8th week or it's for next week? What is?
No, it's for the last project, for individual project.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
so
when it should be ready, I mean, in a week, this part of this individual project. No?
it's all due in week 8.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
In preparation, I'll start giving you some instructions, what I expect from you, and the technical tools to do it. So that would be one part. So I'll mention it, but when you do it, as long as you submit it at the end of week 8, that's up to you. Okay. I will add another piece. We'll talk about the cost of capital. We'll talk about the beta. So I'll expand it from regression beta to something else. And we'll do I'll show you the exercise on beta calculation today. And again, I will point out that individually, that's what I expect you to do for your company. So that's another piece for the final project. Okay. So either you do it next week or you do it the night before it's due. It's completely up to you. Other questions? All right. Okay. So let me check if anything else. All right. I'll talk more about the case as we get to the cost of capital discussion. So as I said, the case is all about the cost of capital. So that will be the topic for a case called Midland. Midland, it's a made-up company. That's not a real company, but the case is prepared to teach you how to calculate cost of capital for a big company with multiple divisions within the company. So that will be kind of a fairly realistic case, even though the data itself is not real data. Okay. All right. So the way it works, in a group discussion, business cases, I call on the group. I will say, Group 2, what do you think about this? So if you can reach to each other and make sure you have somebody who is a spokesperson for a group. So I don't interfere with your in-group dynamics. So this is up to your group to decide. So whoever is a spokesperson, when I say Group 3, somebody from Group 3 should be ready to step in and start talking. Okay. The question was on the individual assignment. Again, I expect it to be submitted before class today. A couple of students reached out saying, for whatever reasons, they cannot submit it today. And I said, okay, on individual assignments, I can extend the deadline for a day, maybe 2 days. But no longer than, until the end of Saturday, because I will be grading it on Saturday. So your end of Saturday is my morning. That's what I start working on this grading. Okay. Penalties. I understand again, I try to enforce the deadlines, but I'm not here to penalize you for something. Okay, so I will not penalize you unless you completely, delay your submission to who knows next week. So that's a different story. So no penalties if you delay it by a day, but do not expect to, if you do it on every assignment, that's not going to work. Okay, because I will mark that you submitted it late. Okay, I hope that's clear. All right. So let me check something. Before we get into. Meanwhile, what I expect you to do now, so one person from each group, look at the results which you got and send me via chat the following. So do not forget to put the group number so I know that your group submitted. So 4 numbers. All right. Group number and then NPV, 4 NPVs, 2 NPVs for 15-year term, 2 MPVs for 25-year term with or without taxes. So look through your numbers, and one person, either that spokesperson or whoever was doing the technical part, send me that via chat. So put those 4 numbers on one line and send it to me. And meanwhile, I will check on something here. Remember, your grading consists of 3 parts. That's your original submission, your post-discussion summary, which will be due by the end of Saturday. I'll put an announcement, a reminder, and your in-class participation. That's also a component of your grading. So make sure to reply in time. And another comment, I do expect you to be on camera for the duration of the class. So unless you made some arrangements, you should be on camera during this discussion. All right, and so I have pretty much everybody now. And just glancing through the numbers, there are some differences between the groups, but directionally, most of them look right, which is a good thing. But I will walk through and I'll show you the solutions, and solutions will be posted for your reference. So that's something will be available when you do the post-discussion summary. Okay. But before we get into the numbers, before I start walking through the calculations, a couple of qualitative questions that were asked for this assignment. So let's do the introduction first. And one of the groups is, what's the case is all about? What are we talking about in this case? So any volunteer group, all groups will speak up. So you cannot hide. So an introduction. Yeah. Metro, go ahead and announce your group number so I know which group have spoken.
Yeah, it's group 1.
Okay.
Generally speaking,
it's easy. Yeah. Okay. Group 1, go ahead.
Group 1, yeah. So generally speaking, the case is about a decision maker of a company which operates on sea and ocean transportations.
Mm-hmm.
And the main, all of this is about one project, which is whether the decision maker should buy Capesize for 1 3-year contract, and then usage of that Capesize for the rest of its usability period. And it consists discussions on the sea transportation industry overall, and lots of assumptions that's basically what was asked in the case. So demand drivers, supply drivers. Yeah. So basically that's it.
Okay, very good. Just to give us a little bit more on the timing. What year are we talking about?
Yeah. So if I remember correctly, the moment when the decision maker should make the decision, Ms. Lin, it's the year 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And if she chooses to buy the Capesize, then it will start operating from the beginning of the year 2003.
Okay. All right. Very good. Katerina, you had a comment, or that's still the hand is up there?
I just would like to add that there are several exhibits in the case in which we have some numbers based on which forecasts were made.
We'll get to that
Okay.
in due course. I will be doing the technical part today. That's the first case. I just demonstrate, how the case discussion works. So let's get to the industry, the expected hiring rate. So this is question 1, and we'll get to group 2. So do we have a representative of group 2 who will be talking about the industry and expected higher rates as given in the case and in the case discussion? Do we have a group 2?
Yes, we are here.
All right.
I guess I can speak. Generally, the market outlook is mixed. So this company operates on the market of charter carriers, and its charter rates highly depend on supply and demand of iron ore and coal. From the case, we know that in 2001 and 2002, charter rates were expected to decline due to weak exports, but in 2003, the industry was expecting to grow as Australia and India expand their iron ore shipments. According to forecasts, daily hire rate was about $20,000 and with some increase on the annual basis.
Okay, all right. This is good. Just one, and again, I'm putting you on the spot to speak up in front of our class. Some of you might be more comfortable, less comfortable, but you do need to speak to clients, to your companies, to your management. So again, you are in class. So it's, let's say I ask you to address a question, and it's perfectly fine to look at your report and literally read it. Okay, so if you cannot just speak on the spot, refer to your notes and just tell me what you've written in your report. That's fine. All right. So group 3, this is your next question. What factors are impacting the daily rates? What can you talk about this? So group 3.
Maybe I will be this time.
All right. That's as I said, this is up to the group's dynamic. Group 3. Yeah, go ahead.
As was mentioned in this case, the average daily high rates are influenced by 2 groups of factors. It's market demand and supply, and market supply. From the side of market demand, it can be the first is economic growth environment. In particular, economic situation in key industries, such as steel production, boosts demand on iron ore. And next component of market demand is that more than 85% of Capesize cargo are involved in transportation of iron ore and coal. And this links demand for shipping to raw material consumption. And third market demand is trade patterns. Trade patterns followed by the states on the global raw material market. And in this case was the example when if Western Europe shifts iron or imports from United States to Australia. I think Australia, yes. The longer voyage distance will increase demand for Capesize. Yes, will increase demand for Capesize.
Okay. All right.
And yes, and from market supply, in this case, we can talk about fleet size or fleet capacity, fleet age. What does it mean about fleet size? It total number of vessels available for shipment is equal to average capacity. And if supplies grow faster than demand, competition among vessels increase, triggering a decrease of daily high rates. And as we saw from exhibition in this case, newly manufactured about newly manufactured vessels, it will increase no, it will increase capacity of vessels.
Okay, all right,
We look
very
in
good.
this case about the increasing of capacity vessels. When many we understand that when many new vessels enter to the market simultaneously, it triggers oversupply that causing decrease
Okay.
of daily rates.
Okay, very good. So just to kind of put a wrapper around this, obviously the information on new ships is publicly available. Okay, it's not a trade secret. So if a company goes ahead and orders another ship, okay, whatever the size is, this information is available to the public and to the ocean carriers company as well, because what, as you said, the more ships you have, the more supply of ships that will push down the rates. Okay, so that's another consideration for the company, is not to just look at today's number of ships available in the industry, but the number of ships that is coming up, because those orders are publicly, the information is publicly available. So the company should take that into account when they go forward and either order a new ship or not order a new ship. All right. So just to keep that in mind. So it's not purely the NPV calculation. How do you reflect it in NPV calculation? So if you see an oversupply of ships, your NPV model should reflect lower rates, and that will impact the NPV calculations. So that's how this is connected to the financial analysis. All right. Very good. So let's get to the last piece. So that will be the long-term prospects of this industry. I'll go to group 4, but I will ask group 5, 6, and 7 the same question. And I'll put you on the spot. Transfer this. What's the prospect of this industry today? Not just in the case, but given the economic conditions in the world, what do you think about the prospects of this shipping industry going forward, including the tariffs and all of these things that's happening? I didn't ask you that question, but so thinking kind of on your feet and try to answer that question. So starting with group 4, what do you think about this prospects of industry as stated in the case, and then try to tackle what do you think about today's state of the same industry? So group 4.
Yeah, so basically there could be different views on the prospects of this industry, because we also incorporated in our answer not only the case but the real world situation. Based on the case and the provided forecast for Vice President of Ocean Carriers, the industry would grow like quite steady with a growing number of shipments, and the situation is quite predictable in a peaceful world without trade wars, without unexpected an obvious wars between countries and trade wars and tariffs and so on. So we, as we think, these are all new routes across the world, and like the possibilities of trade wars. It's much difficult to predict what would be the situation in this industry of vessels, because even in the case it's already 2027, but the case started in early 2000, and already there's a global recession, and 2008 global crisis, and 2014 Crimea, and war in the south, and so on and so on. So China, US, trade wars. So basically, it's hard to predict in a real world without peaceful negotiations, without countries and peaceful cooperation.
Okay. All right. So again, I'll put you on the spot. Again, I didn't ask you that question to prepare. If you are the president of Ocean Carriers today, would you order a new ship? We'll start with group 4 and then move to other groups. So what do you think?
But basically, I'm not sure. We would still make the same calculations, but maybe our like discount rate would be much higher, and we would like somehow incorporate these risks in our net present value calculations.
Remember, I pointed to you as a president of the company. So I'll put you on the spot. You cannot say I'm not sure.
Okay.
You are the president. You're supposed to make a decision. What's your decision? And it's
Okay,
perfectly fine to say no.
yeah,
I'm
we-
not going to order due to
We
that
will
uncertainty.
postpone like buying of shipments to the more peaceful times, like maybe a couple of years. We will wait.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. How do you call this? Do you cover option pricing in other classes?
No.
No, you don't talk about financial instruments. There is an instrument called a call option. It's a financial instrument. In this scenario, when you delay a decision, it's called the option. You delay your option. So this is called the option, the real option approach. Okay, you retain that option, but not implementing it today. That's perfectly fine. Group 5, same question. Do we have group 5?
Basically, group 5.
go ahead.
I will represent the group 5. Basically, we cannot tell exactly like to have 1 minute to think. With respect of the current situation in trade wars, would like to discard the purchase of the large Cape-size vessels due to their high uncertainty. It's much better to order smaller vessel with lower dead weight. I think that less than 100,000 tons, and also to expand its abilities to ship not only iron ore but other commodities.
Okay.
And another factor that would also influence my decision is that USA put a protection on their steel industry, making there will be less shipments across the globe regarding steel industry.
Okay. So again, straight question. As of today, would you order a new ship?
No.
Yes, no. Yes, no. Okay, no. And
Yes, that's no.
just a few reasons.
As it's I'd like to say no. That's first because of the uncertainty and particularly due to the import tariffs on steel in the USA, which one of the most the largest consumers of the steel.
All right.
And
that's good.
from our model, we found that even as a change in the parameters such as taxes influences our decision a lot. We cannot extrapolate and encounter all the factors and possible decision switches of taxes over the next 15 or 25 years.
That's an interesting one. I'll come back to this. A good answer.
Okay.
So group 6 and 7, same thing. So group 6, restate what you answered in your report about these questions. And the question, remember, is to how do you characterize the state of the industry? And then what do you think about today's order? So same question with extension to today's scenario. So group 6.
Okay, group 6 is here. First of all, let me corroborate on what we had in a case. So in medium run from 2002 to 2005, we expect a period of stable growth. Also, we had information about India and Australia. They're going to increase number in ore shipments, and in the long term, growth is expected to be a little bit lower than first years. That's what we had for the case, and that would determine some long-term prospects. As of now, I would, as a president of Ocean Carriers, I would expect that in 2 to 3 years, new political cycles in the world would change trading environment, so barriers would be lower, so demand for shipments would increase. But as of now, as of today, I would just invest in ships just enough to sustain my current operations. Maybe I would check all my ships, where some of them are almost impaired, and also I think I would invest in technologies just to make costs lower in the future. That would be practical independent of demand for ships.
Okay, so we have 3 options: order today, do not order today, delay. So which one do you pick?
Delay still.
Okay. All right. And group 7. Again, restate what you said in your report, and then give me the today's view. Group 7?
Yep, sure. Do you hear me?
Yes.
So what we have in medium term that the new exports would be open from India and also from Australia. There would be strong demand for carriers, and part of current carriers that are new now will be gone to old fleet or will be scrapped. So our new big carrier could be very useful in that time. And for longer term options, the demand is prognosed to grow steadily, but also the technology for new ships is growing. And if technology growth would be bigger, the demand for ships would be naturally lower. So we expect maybe in the future there will be mergers in the companies, in the industry. But medium term is quite lucrative. And for the current time, because of trade wars between US and China, India, etc., they imposing tariffs. This drives internal steel industry in USA to be like a benefit of it, and US would consume more their own steel. They would export less. More of it, the Europe would, I think, would prefer to buy cheaper steel coming from India, China, Australia. And because all of my competitors either canceled or delayed their buyings of new ship, in this situation, I would buy a new ship and make revenues in the following years.
All right. So again, 3 options: order the ship today, do not order the ship today, delay.
Order ship, especially because a lot of wars going on around the globe, so the demand for ore and steel would be high.
Okay. So let me clarify something before we move on to the next part of the discussion. So you mentioned about technology something. Can you clarify what you have in mind?
I mentioned technology growth because new ships are bigger than previous ones. They use less fuel, they're faster. So to transport the same volumes, we would need less ships, and if the growth in volumes is smaller than the growth in ship technology, we would still need less ships in long run.
Okay, very good. Anna, you had a comment?
Yeah, it's not our turn, but I would like to add to what was said by Dmitro, and maybe I'm pessimistic, but yeah, it looks like we are moving to big wars. And anyway, a lot of countries prepare for this and still is required. And if we have issues on, for example, Suez Channel, for example, then demand for capsize will grow because the trade patterns will change. So maybe it's better to buy right now.
Okay, all right. Any other comments? So now open to anybody who would like to speak up, something that you had in mind that wasn't mentioned. So that will be an opportunity for you to speak up. Again, remember, class participation is part of your grade, and that's the opportunity, okay, to participate in a discussion. Because if I don't hear you by the end of week 7, that's your participation score. Make sure that I hear your voice. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
A little bit, yeah. I want to clarify.
Yeah, just make sure to state your group number.
Group number 6.
Okay.
I agree with everything that my member of team like said before, but I want to add that the long-term prospects for the Capesize industry remain highly cyclical. So we have few years really good, we have few years really bad. Right now, it's not probably the best year for this industry and overall for industries in the world. But in general, after a few years of bad years, we will have like again very good years. So only delay, and then we have like again good decision. So
okay, very good. I'll come back to a few comments that you made individually.
Yeah, what I would like to add from Group 5, that as our company is mainly involved in carrying business, and so the main asset which generates our profits are carriers. So sooner or later we should have bought the carrier, new carrier, as our assets would become old and would depreciate. So we somewhere in the future should renew our assets.
All right.
Or close our enterprise.
Okay. Anastasia?
Thank you. From Group 2, I just wanted to add that in making the decision of whether to buy the new ship or not, we should not only think about the the demand for the capsize transportation, but also for like Dmitro said, whether we have enough ships to cover our current operations. But then also the policy of the firm was mentioned that we scrap any 15-year-old ship or the one that reaches 15 years. So we should also ask ourselves whether we should scrap that ship and buy a new one, or whether it's better to keep the old one operational.
Okay.
So the decision might be like not buy the new ship because we need more to cover our operations, but don't buy the new ship, but keep the old one and like scrap the policy or change the policy.
Very good. Again, a few comments coming up on this. Anybody else? All right. So let me step back a little bit, the decision making. Obviously, we'll get to the numbers, and the numbers will help us to make the decision. But in general, okay, this particular company is in the business of moving bulk goods, okay, like iron ore, okay. So even if they do not order the ship today, they will need the ships going forward, because eventually they will become obsolete, And they, at some point, the regulators say you cannot run the 50-year-old ship. It's dangerous. It's not allowed. Okay. So at some point, you have to order the ship. All right. And in real life, think about the managers, the owners, the bias, meaning their decision making is typically what? Optimistic. You don't become the owner of a business or the CEO if you are by nature a pessimist. All right. And I work with, I work in small business lending, so I work with a lot of business owners, and they are habitually over optimistic. You don't go into your own business, you don't run your own business if you're a pessimist. You get an economic degree, you become risk manager if you're a pessimist. All right. But that's generally the way it works. You don't go, you don't grow into the decision making. That's why I pushed you you are the CEO. You cannot say, oh, I'm not sure what to do. That's not the CEO. Okay. You need to make a decision, and the typical bias at the top of the chain, those people got there because they're optimists. For the most part, I'm not saying 100%, but for the most part, people who grow, to those positions are optimistic. They make mistakes. That's perfectly fine. Okay. But if you're not optimistic, very difficult to plan for the future. All right. And that applies to not just to, like this business, building new ships. They need ships going forward. So yes, delaying, ordering, fine, but you need a number of ships to keep operating. If you keep, delaying, all of your ships become obsolete. You cannot run the business. All right. So you have to order the ships at some point. All right. And that doesn't apply just to this kind of the material things. Example from our group. We do, analytical work. We need a lot of analysts. And it's kind of a unique combination of skills, because what we do on one hand, and that's what you study in your program, you study how to program things, how to write code, okay, so you can run a program. So on one hand, our analysts must be technically proficient to write the code, to pull the data, to find the right data, to analyze the data. But then the question is what this data means. You need to interpret the data, not just to run the numbers, say, okay, senior manager, you asked me to run this data. Here's the result. And senior manager says, what does it mean? You need to interpret it. So what happened when the pandemic started, we're really cut down on number of new hires. And you don't become an analyst overnight. You have to go through this process for a number of years before you get the skills on both sides. The business side, you need to be able to interpret the data. And on the technical side, you need to be able to get the data and to analyze it. So it takes a few years to get kind of a professional up to speed. And if you stop hiring, you stop this process. So if I need to hire today an analyst who is ready to step in and do the work, I don't have anybody. Because a lot of companies did the same thing. They stopped hiring in 2020 during the pandemic. So that cohort of analysts is not there. Not completely, but the number of available people with appropriate skills is not enough. So there is a shortage of that particular combination. All right. And the reason is very similar to you don't order a ship over a few years, you don't have enough ships. Okay, same thing with analytics or any other business for that matter. All right. Does it make sense? Any questions on this? All right, very good. So what I will do next, I will walk through the technical piece and I'll set up kind of 1 or 2 years of cash flows and show you the result, and we'll discuss the results. But again, if you're able to kind of copy what I do or just watch, and if you need to clarify anything, stop me, raise the hand electronically, better, because when I share my screen, I might not see your physical hand. All right. So the way it will work, let me get into an Excel file, and what I will do. So this is what was given to you. All right, and let me start with this. Okay, just to make sure you see what I have on my screen. So this is the numbers given to you. Again, a department within a company, a finance department, will most likely work on this, do the research, and build some projections. Okay, so that's the result of that particular work. And then another analyst will pick up this. So somebody who knows the industry, knows how many ships, knows the pricing in the industry, will put together these numbers. Okay. And then the finance department will be tasked to calculate the NPV of this particular project. All right. So the daily hiring rate is given. All right. So we will use it to build the revenue. And what I will do, I will literally follow the template I presented last week. So we'll start with revenue, expenses, and then all of the adjustments, all the way down to the free cash flow, and then calculate the NPV of the project. Okay. But let's start with the CapEx. So first you need to calculate the investment to get the ship. And you have two timelines, and I'll get to some of the details on the timeline. So you have the timeline starting today, and I'll talk about what this zero means. Okay. Some questions came up before the case, so I'll kind of add a little bit there. So you have the timeline starting today, and then you have another timeline for the ship life, because it takes what? It takes 3 years to purchase the ship. Actually, 3 payments today, and then another 2 payments before you get the ship, before the ship is built. And then the ship starts operating, and you have 2 options, either 15-year life of the ship or 25-year life of the ship. But from today, that's a different timeline, just to make sure this is clear. All right. And the CapEx, so the ship value is, it says 39 million. All right. And the way it works, so today, that's the today payment. They pay what? 10% of the value of the ship. So that will be the down payment, so to speak, at time 0 will be the 3.9 million. All right. Then another payment of the same amount, 3.9 million, another 10%, and the rest of the payment when the ship is ready. Okay. But we need to split it up, because we need to use the timeline, because we discount each cash flow. And again, in our work, we care about the cash flows. So the first cash flow, we call it time 0, 3.9 million, not the complete 39 million, because it's going to take 3 years to make those payments. Okay. So that's the CapEx. Now let me skip a couple of lines here and start building the revenue. And I'm not going to do a whole thing. I'll show you the examples, but just to demonstrate the way it works. So when the ship is ready at the end of year 2 from today, okay, in year 3, the ship starts operating, and it generates this much per day. So if the ship is hired every day, that will be the amount of revenue generated. But remember, as from the case, you have 365 days in a year, but the ship does not operate every single day. What does it say in the case? How many days it's not operating? Dmitro?
Right.
Yeah, group one. So for the first 5 years, it doesn't operate for 8 days.
Okay, so 365 minus 8. So that will be the number of days that the ship is operating. And while it's new, it's operating on this schedule. All right. And then what does it say?
Yeah, it tells it after 5 years until 10 years, it will not operate for 12 days.
Okay. So just to make sure I point this out, so for the next 5 years, that will be the number of days operating. Marco, you had a question?
Yeah, regarding this, we also have to make sure that it affects only revenue, while OPEXs are still calculating for the whole year.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't get to that. You're right. I will add that piece. But for the revenue for the first year of operations, so those are the two variables. You have number of days of hiring multiplied by the daily rate. So you have your revenue, and again, you extend it obviously to the 15-year or 25-year, and you will calculate your annual revenue based on these calculations. All right. Now, expenses. Yeah, Anna.
Sorry, some step back. You have 0 year when we make down payment in 2000, but the decision is done in 2001.
All right.
So
Let me, so when I get to the free cash flow, to the end of this, I'll talk about this. Okay. So if you can wait 5-10 minutes, depending how soon we get there. So that's a separate discussion. Stanislav?
Yeah, I'd like to tell about the ship. It's probably on delivery on 2003, if I'm not wrong.
So it's delivered by the end of 2002 and starts operating in 2003.
Okay, now I understand.
That's the case assumption. Okay, that's the reason I go through so you can ask questions and clarify. So OPEX, and again, so let me build something here, and it says so I'll do this kind of on the side. OPEX, so the daily expenses. And it says that the company expects to spend $4,000 a day on running the ship. Okay, and there is another piece of information there. This is not going to stay at $4,000 every year because you have inflation. Okay, and the case give you this number of 4% a year will be what? An increase in expenses. So the salaries of the people who work for the company are increasing. The port that the ship is serviced might increase their fees. So that's a pretty typical assumption. They do use the 3% inflation rate, but for this cost, they use the 4%. So in the next year, all right, it will be 1 plus this 4%. All right. So that will be the expense in the second year. So let me fix it up. All right. And I will increase it every year at a 4% rate. Everybody follows this? All right. And going back to the comment that was made, that the ship is operating every day. If we adjusted the number of revenue by the number of days that ship is not operating, in this particular case, we obviously make an, I'm sorry, 4,000. You have to pay every day, 365. So you do not adjust for the days that you're not getting revenue. Okay. So your expenses will be this much. And again, it's personal preference. I like to see expenses as a negative number. All right. You don't have to do it, but it's easier for me to see, okay, this is expense, this is cash inflow. All right. Everybody on the same page? All right. So let me move to the right. Mark, you had a question?
Maybe let's be consistent and state capex as a negative number.
That's right. This is not actually part of the cash outflows. I will do it later, so I will reverse that sign. This is just to demonstrate what happens with the capex. All right. But for actual calculations, so my next line is EBITDA. All right. And this is simply the sum of these two numbers. All right. So this is my EBITDA. All right. And I can just drive it down. So this is my operating income before depreciation. Okay. Now, depreciation, so the total spending on the ship is $39 million. All right. And this is something that is driven by accounting rules. So the tax authority, they drive this because depreciation will reduce your income. It will reduce your taxes. So the tax authority actually gives the company a schedule saying this class of assets must be depreciated over a certain number of years. Okay? So if this is the ship, and expected life of the ship is 25 years, you use 25 years to calculate your depreciation. All right? You cannot use 15. Even if you run it for 15 years, you still apply this schedule. You take 39 million, divide by 25. So this is your depreciation expense, and it will run all the way down to 25 years to fully depreciate this ship. And again, I would like to see this as depreciation expense. So that's a negative number. Okay. Sorry, let me do this. All right. Now, so this is the original depreciation. But here's the piece here that we need to pay attention to. So first, let me do the EBIT. And that will be just the sum of these two. All right. And that will be the starting point to calculate the free cash flows. All right. Now, before I move on to do the taxes and calculate EBIT after tax, all right, I need to make another adjustment. Dmitry had a comment?
Don't we need to add also the depreciation from special commissions before EBIT and taxes?
Give me a bit more. I'm not sure I follow you.
The ship, every 5 years, ship going through special commissions, and they are counted as capex. So they depreciated for 5 years.
All right. And that's exactly where I'm going next. It's actually called what? It's not a commission. It's what? It's a capital expenditure. Why is it a capital expenditure? Remember, we talked a little bit about this last week. There were a couple other, so let me see. Okay. If let's say the owners of the ship decided to do a minor maintenance, some kind of repainting the captain's quarters on the ship, it will be a maintenance expense. It will go into that particular year expenses. Any investment that will benefit the ship for more than a year, it's a capital expenditure. That amount will be added to the balance sheet as part of the equipment, and that equipment needs to be depreciated. Everybody follows? Okay. And that's exactly what I will do next. I will take that a particular detail. So after 5 years, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all right. And at the in this year, in year 5, I will spend another $300,000 to what? To fix up the ship. All right. Now, this happens every 5 years. So the next one will be $350,000. So that means this particular expense needs to be depreciated over a 5-year term. Everybody follows? So what is the 5-year depreciation that you need to depreciate additionally to the original depreciation? And if you spend 300,000 here, then you need to do what? You need to add, actually it's going to be, let me calculate it separately because I need to deduct it. So 300 divided by 5. So every year I need to depreciate additional $60,000. So after I spend $300,000 to this, I would need to add another $60,000 in depreciation. Everybody follows? Anastasia, you had a comment?
Yeah, but it seems I've figured out. So thank you. Sorry.
All right. Maxime?
I have a question why we start depreciation this 100,000 in the next year, but not in the year when it was made this.
All right. Very good question. And this actually applies to the ship depreciation as well. Okay. So after you get the ship, you see that you make a payment, and let's make sure that the timeline is clear. You make the payment at the end of year 2. You make one payment today. You make the second payment a year from today, and you make the third, the final payment at the end of year 2. Now you spend 39 million. Your depreciation starts next year, not this year, not before you made the payment. After you made all of these payments, then the 39 million will be depreciated over the next 25 years, but starting the following year. Same concept applies here. You spent 300,000 in this year, your depreciation starts next year. Does it make clear? Okay, Mitra?
Yeah, I would also like to ask if this capital expense will add up to the book value of the ship. If we do it like repair for the survey, will it be counted as inventories or as a increase in the value of the ship?
All right, let me, if I understand your question correctly, you keep spending CapEx, you add into the value of the ship, but then you depreciate it over the next year, that value disappears.
Yeah, okay, so basically, okay.
So you do add this to your balance sheet, but after 5 years, this $300,000 will go away.
Mm-hmm.
Then you spend 350 over the next 5 years, it will be depreciated to zero. The 39 million will be depreciated to zero over 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yaroslav?
Yeah, I have a question. Why don't we depreciate those 3,900,000 at the next year? Like at period 1.
A good question. Do you have the ship? You don't have the ship yet. You have nothing to depreciate. You just made the first payment, but there is no asset yet. Okay. After you made the last payment, the ship is in the port, you can start depreciating.
Okay, understood. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Again, this is a kind of technical piece. You might not have come across something like this in the past, so that's a reasonable to have questions about this. All right. So taxes. So let me run it through. All right. And obviously you do 350, you replace this 350 divided by 5. So your adjustment will be different going forward, just to make sure. I'll show you the calculations, just conceptually will be the same thing. Taxes, 35%. And I will just apply this 35% to my operating income. All right. And again, I'd like to keep this consistent. So this is a tax expense, and I will fix it up and keep doing the taxes. All right. And my operating income after taxes will be just the sum of these two. Okay. Everybody on the same page? All right.
Yes.
Now, yeah, go ahead.
And yes, I just said that I'm on one page with you.
Okay. So now we follow our template that I presented last week. Remember, the next item is depreciation, adding that. All right. Then we have the CapEx, and then we have change in net working capital, and then we have other adjustments. Okay. And all of these will end up to be free cash flow. Okay. So let me do this. So this is the easiest one. You take the depreciation and you just reverse the sign. Make sure that you adding it to your calculations, because this is not a cash outflow. The actual cash outflow happened with the CapEx. And that's what I will do here, changing the sign. So this is your cash outflow for the CapEx. All right. So that's where I will take it into account. And remember, I need to take into account these cash capital expenditures. All right. So make sure that I calculate this, including the capital expenditures. Everybody followed? All right. Okay. So let me do this. And change in net working capital. Now, let's, you have to refer back. So let me do this net working capital calculation in this column, and I will use it to build up the change in net working capital. And from the case, it says before the company starts operation in this year, they need to invest in net working capital. There's a few different ways that remember, what's the net working capital? What's the, by definition, net working capital is equal to what? Current assets minus current liabilities. All right. So in this particular case, current assets are what? Accounts receivable, inventory, cash. Current liabilities, for the most part, accounts payable. You owe somebody money. All right. And different businesses have different kind of natural process of building up net working capital. In this particular case, it says that the company needs to invest $500,000 in its net working capital before they start operations. All right. And then what will happen, these will grow at a 3% rate. That's the assumption for the inflation rate. So your net working capital balance will keep increasing at a 3% rate. All right. So your, again, this is before they start operating in this year. This will be by the end of that year, they need to increase net working capital. That means the current assets will increase more than current liabilities by 3%. Okay. So, and that will keep increasing by 3%. So that will be the picture. All right. So now, when do we have an increase? So, Dmitry, you had a question?
Yeah, I was not sure that it stated before operations, and like we could make this investment as a company in the time when we start buying ship in event 0 year or year 1.
Well, again, net working capital is needed. It's working capital. It's working. So there is no shipping yet in year 1. Okay, there is no shipping at time 0, obviously. Okay, you will start shipping in this particular time frame. So this is what, in this case, 2003. You don't have any shipping in 2002, so you don't need working capital in 2002. You need it in 2003, but you have to have it on day 1 of 2003. That's why you need to invest it at the end of 2002. Make sense? And other companies, so think about this, it's pretty typical. Just make sure the timing is important. In some scenarios, you start a project, you don't need a working capital. Remember what's working, accounts receivable. You haven't started selling yet. You don't have any accounts receivable. You might not need inventory on day 1. Okay, you gradually build it. So net working capital assumptions are important here. If your net working capital starts from 0 in year 1 and goes to a certain balance at the end of year 1, so you start with 0 net working capital and it grows to a particular balance by the end of the first year of operations. In this particular, so think about a retail store. Do you have working capital on day 1? You open the door of the store and it's empty. That's how you open the store. You need inventory on day 1. Okay, you open the door, you walk, the customer walks in, there is a lot of stuff there. That's inventory. So you need inventory on day 1. That means you need to invest before you start operations. Does it make sense? Okay. In some other businesses, it could be perfectly fine to have no working capital on day 1. In this particular case, the case gives you information. They do need $500,000 on day 1 of the operation start. Maxim?
Okay, I can understand what means net working capital in the retail business, but I can understand what in this case it could be.
All right. The ship is going into the sea in the first day of operations. Do you plan to feed your crew? Do you need to buy potatoes, tomatoes, everything else to feed them? Do you follow the logic here? You do need working capital. You need something to what? To start expand. That's a working capital. They need to invest before they go out of the port. All right? On day 1, not after they leave the port. Make sense? Yes, no?
Yes.
All right. Stanislav?
I'm interested why we do not include this net working capital expenditures into operating expenditures.
Try again. I didn't follow your question.
Okay, so when it's told that we have to buy something before starting operating the ship, I was interested why we can just add it to the operating expenditures.
Well, you know, my example, the food might be a part of the operating expenditures, but certain things like inventory that they might need to have will be part of the working capital. Okay, it will not be operating expenses. Okay, so something that the ship needs on a regular basis, and they need to increase that balance by 3%, it will be part of the net working capital. Okay.
Okay.
The details are not critical. We're doing finance. I'm not an expert in shipping, so I do not know what they exactly have in net working capital. But that's what the company tells you. Tells you we need something there on a permanent basis, and that something will grow at 3%. Okay, Maxim?
Yeah, maybe from my point of view, where all this cost, it's not our cost, it's cost the another company that from which receive from us this vessel. So we buy vessel, give it to this company, and it companies hires new workers, also feeds them. And all this cost, it's her cost. Our only buy a vessel and some repairs cost on something like that.
again, when you start running the ship, you negotiated contract who pays for what. In this particular case, the case gives it information. They need to invest $500,000 to start operating in net working capital. All right, and that working capital will grow at 3%, so that needs to be taken into account in the cash flow calculation. Metro?
Yeah, I would also to add that the case mentions that the company which we are like creating the project for are providing the already manned vessel with a crew. So like probably something like this could be a working capital. And I also wanted to ask you, so the initial investment in net working capital means the investment the year before the ship starts operating, because like we included it in year 0.
Okay.
Understanding
So
the initial, like...
Yeah, let me interrupt you, and I'm getting to the end of the free cash flows. When I do this, I'll do a little bit of a discussion of the timing. What's a 0, what's 1, and so on. Okay, so let's wait. That was a kind of question asked earlier. So let's get to the free cash flow, and then I'll talk about the timing. All right, so that's coming up. So for now, let's make this assumption. So your first change in net working capital will be at this point, and this will be this. You had nothing in the prior year. All right, and again, this is an investment. Remember, an increase in net working capital is a cash outflow. So just to make sure this is clear, it's a negative sign. Okay, and again, I put it right before we start operations. And if I go this way, you will see that an increase, just the change, is from 500 to 515. That's an additional investment of $15,000. And it keeps increasing. All right? Is this clear? All right, let me skip this for a second, and I will calculate the free cash flows. So picking up after tax operating income with all of the adjustments, my first cash flow obviously will be 3.9 million. That's the first payment at time 0. So let me add the timeline here again. All right. And let me do this calculations here. All right. So that's the free cash flow. That's the timeline. All right. Now, what I need to do, I need to discount each cash flow. The discount rate is given, 9%. And what I will do, I will take this cash flow, discount it, 1 plus the discount rate, raised to the power of number of years. Okay, and obviously today 3.9 million is 3.9 million. All right, and as I go through my calculations, this will be the present values. All right, and if I go all the way down to year 15 and 25, I will just sum up all of this present values, and that will be my net present value for the project. Everybody is comfortable with the template? So again, just going through, starting with revenue, calculating net operating income, calculating taxes, after tax, and making those adjustments. Depreciation, CapEx, change in net working capital, other adjustments. I'll get to this salvage value in a second. Calculating free cash flow, taking each one individually, discounting, or using the Excel NPV function, if you remember how to correctly use it, calculate present value, sum it up. Okay. Now, let's talk about the timing. And that's some confusion there, to make sure this is clear. obviously in finance, we have to make certain assumptions. And when we do this annually, well, what does it mean time zero? And even in some textbooks, you will see, saying year zero. Make sure this is clear. There is no such thing as year zero. It's a moment in time. So in this particular scenario, you have year 2000, you have year 2001. That's when they make a decision. The assumption, the mathematical assumption, time zero is just a moment in time on January 1st, 2001. Year one starts January 1st, 2001, goes through December 31st, 2001. That's year one. There is no year zero. All right. So this is very critical to understand. And, sometimes I ask my students, what's a Roman numeral for zero? It's a trick question because there is no such thing. Okay. There is no Roman numeral for zero because Romans did not have a concept of zero. It was invented in Middle Ages, much, much later. Okay. So it's not a trivial thing to think about zero. Again, in finance, when we say time zero, I don't like to call it year zero because there is no year zero. Okay. It's a moment in time when you make a decision. Obviously, in real life, it might take you some time to make a decision, but in finance, our assumption, it's the instant decision. Immediately, time zero, you make a decision, and you pay 3.9 million at time zero. Does that make sense? All right. And year one starts right there in 2001 and runs through December 31st. Now, in finance, our assumption is that all of the cash flows come at the end of the year, literally at midnight, December 31st. All right. So if I go to my template here, all of these cash flows, the mathematical assumption. So when the company operates, it will generate revenue and all of these adjustments. So we literally assume this will happen at the end of that year or on December 31st. Because we discounted for a full year. Okay. Is this realistic?
Not at all.
All right. Can you improve on that assumption? Yes. All right. So let's say the ship operates on a daily basis. Now, if you generate revenue constantly during the year, on average, when do you get your revenue?
In the middle of the year.
Give me the date. You're right.
Something like end of July.
You're a little bit off.
June, end of June.
June 30th. That will be the midpoint of the year. All right. Again, it's an assumption, but half of your revenue comes in the first half of the year, half of the revenue comes in the second part of the year. What do you do mathematically if you would like to adjust for it? Instead of the full year, you say half a year. And then 1.5 of the years. So you see what you can do? Would you be more realistic in this case? Somewhat. So instead of assuming December 31st, you assume June 30th. It's more realistic. Okay. And in some cases, it's worthwhile to do this adjustment. So if you have a 3-year project, it's a good idea to do what's called a mid-year discounting. All right. But in a 30-year project, it's so distant that half-a-year adjustment doesn't make much of a difference. Okay, so make sure that you kind of use your logic. So in many projects I do, if it's a short-term project, I actually do monthly cash flows and I discount monthly. It's more realistic because that's how the cash flow comes in. Perfectly fine. If it's a long-term, it's a 25-year project, doesn't make much of a difference. Okay, so end of the year, it's a mathematical assumption. We do need to make an assumption. That's a perfectly reasonable assumption. All right? Does it clarify the timeline? Again, time zero is a moment in time when we make a decision and make the first investment. And all of the other cash flows, the assumption is they come at the end of the year. How good is that assumption? You know, we can debate, but you have the mathematical way to adjust for it. Okay, the shorter the project, the better to adjust. The longer the project, doesn't make much of a difference. So in this particular calculations, so let me undo it. All right, and I'll keep end of the year discounting. But that's the way to build this, starting with revenue, all the way to the free cash flows, taking the cash flows and discounting them to present, and then calculating the present value. I did skip adjustments. That's for the salvage value. So what I will do, we'll take a 15-minute break. I'll come back. We'll do the salvage value calculations. All right, and then complete the NPV calculations. All right, let's take 15 minutes. All right, let's resume. So I walked through the free cash flow calculations following the template I presented last week, from revenue all the way down to the free cash flows. We have two adjustments to make at the end. I'll do the 15-year, but then I'll show you 15 and 25-year options. So let me get into my Excel file. All right. So that's the calculations I made, but let me highlight year 15 of operations. Okay. So our first assumption is that the ship will be scrapped at this point. Okay. Now, so let me extend my working capital to this point. All right. Remember, working capital is current assets minus current liabilities. Okay. And we assume that the ship will be scrapped at this point. So remember how we calculate the change in net working capital? We'll take working capital and deduct the previous year. But remember how it happens here and those 2 years. Okay. So the balance at the end of the project will be zero. The working capital will disappear. All right. Which means what? Current assets, receivable, inventory. Receivable, you collect money. Inventory, you sell inventory, you collect money. Current liabilities, accounts payable, you pay your bills. The difference, whatever the balance is, will go from this amount to this amount to zero at the end of the project. So what will happen to change in net working capital in the last year? Yeah, Marco?
So we would have a positive number, meaning that our accumulated net working capital would be a cash inflow.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So let me just make sure I have the right numbers here. I'm sorry. 15. All right. So this amount, the 756, will be recovered. It goes from 756 to zero. So that means the change in net working capital will be the cash inflow of this amount. Everybody follows? All right. So I will recover all of the balance from the previous year to the end of this year. That will be the cash inflow. The salvage value is a little bit trickier. So let me walk through the salvage value calculations. So the price of the ship. Remember, we started with 39 million. Okay. In 15 years, what was the accumulated depreciation? So every year we depreciate this amount. We depreciate it for 15 years. All right. So by the end of year 15, that's how much we depreciated total. So the book value at the end of year 15 will be the sum of these two amounts. Everybody follows? All right. Now, what does it say? How much the company will recover by scrapping the ship and selling the metal? Maxime?
5 million.
5 million. So recovery is 5 million. All right. So let me just make sure I have my numbers right here. All right. So you have something, Elizaveta, you have a comment? Okay. All right.
Sorry, it's
Can I call you Liz?
oh, sorry.
I'm asking, can I call you Liz because your name is too long? Just kidding. All right. So you have something on the books, 15.6 million. You recovered 5 million. You have what? You have a loss of this much. Everybody follows? All right. If you have a loss, assuming that this is one project within a big company, if this project loses money and the company is still profitable, it can lower the company's income by this amount, there will be a tax benefit. What is the tax benefit? 35%, that's the tax rate. All right. And this is a positive amount. That means the cash flow will be the 5 million you get from the scrap plus the tax benefit. So your cash flow for this project will be this amount. So that will be the adjustment that you need to make for the end of the project. So that will be the cash inflow. Anna?
Yeah, small question, because we've adjusted for inflation with 5 million for scrapping of the vessel. Is it okay? So we've adjusted for 15 and 25 years. What it will be the sum in the future?
That's actually interesting piece. So the case gives you assumption 15 years from today. Okay, so they expect to scrap it and recover $5 million 15 years from today. If you do the same thing for 25 years, so you will do it 5 million here, and then you can adjust for inflation for the remaining 10 years. Make sense?
Yeah, okay. So we've done one.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
kind of half of the way correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that 5 million
That's
was
right.
given for the 15-year option.
Okay.
All right. But if you do the assumptions for the 25 years, you might say, okay, this scrap will increase at inflation rate. So that's actually what the case suggests. All right. Any questions on the adjustments on the net working capital recovery and on the salvage value? All right. So let me go through. Andrei?
Yes, sorry. Could you please explain once again what exactly is tax benefit? Because I don't really get it.
Okay. Again, disclaimer, I follow the American rules, okay? You might have a very different rules within Ukraine, so you need to adjust it for local requirements, obviously. In the US, if you have a loss, and there is a few important assumptions there. If you have a loss on one particular project, okay, or even the company has a loss, but the company paid taxes in the past, company can literally go back to the government and say, in this year, we have a loss. We lost money, but we paid taxes in the past, send us a refund. And that refund is what? The loss amount multiplied by the tax rate. Make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
So again, your rules might be different, but in the United States, that's the way it's treated. So a key assumption, the company must be profitable. So all the projects still generate profit so you can reduce your tax. And this particular project will have a benefit from the reduction of taxes. If the company loses money, you cannot what? You cannot have a benefit. Okay, Metro?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, so in case it was mentioned that scrap is one of two options. The other one is selling on the second-hand market. So we decided like to implement this assumption that they sold the ship for the book value and then like calculated the taxes from this operation. Could it be the case here, or we should better use the scrapping and then the tax benefit option?
All right. You are a CEO of a competitive company. Would you buy a 15-year-old ship?
No. No way.
All right. So yes, it's an option, but that's going to be a special case. You have to find a buyer that. So you're absolutely right. So you might find a buyer that will be willing to pay you a better price than 5 million. And obviously, if you run the business and you can buy, you can have a buyer for more than 5 million. Be my guest, sell it for more. Okay, but that's kind of the fallback option: scrap it and sell it.
So like scrapping is like the basic option. Okay,
it's a fallback. You can always scrap the ship and sell the metal.
Okay.
Okay, Metro.
Will you talk about scrapping after 25 years later, or because I have a question on this?
So that was kind of the question, the inflation adjustment. So if you scrap it after 25 years, so what will be the value of the metal in 25 versus the 5? And that's the one of the adjustments is to say, okay, the price of the scrap will increase with inflation. So you take 5 million, increase it by inflation rate for 10 years until the year 25, and you sell it not for 5 million, but some larger amount 12, 25 years from today.
I was just not sure if we operate ship for 25 years, so maybe the metal elsewhere would be in so bad shape that it can't be scrapped anymore.
I'm not sure I follow you. Or why can't you scrap the ship?
I don't know this English, but when the metal in water for a long period or in bad weather, it just like.
All right, you know more about metal in water than I do, but
so I assumed that if we operate ship for a full period, 25 years, so we just depreciate it completely and that's it, finish.
Yeah, the depreciation, so the book value will go down to 0. Okay, but it's still, there is still a metal there. You can scrap and sell the scrap. Unless you say it's unsellable, you have to throw it away. That's another option. So, but I would assume that it's still some value there.
But it's hard to estimate this value.
I'm sorry, say it again.
But it is hard to estimate this value.
That's why one of the options to estimate is to do what? to say, okay, the scrap, the metal is still there. You can still melt it. Okay, if it's corroded, and somebody says a corrosion, then fine. This is an assumption you need to make. All right, Anastasia.
May I ask you a question about so we say that this ship can serve 25 years, and after 25 years, it's totally depreciated. And I'm asking not about this ship, but like in general, theoretically speaking, what happens if you have an asset that is totally depreciated, but you can still use in your business? Like you initially expected to use for 10 years, say 10-year period came up, but this asset is still being in use, it's still fine. How do you do that in accounting?
It's on the books. It has a value of 0.
Yeah.
Does it have a market value?
Probably.
So one example, when I was doing my PhD in business history, some of you might have heard about a company called Nobel Brothers. It was the largest oil company in the world, located in what is now Azerbaijan, Baku. All right. So that was the Nobel Prize money come from that company. It was sold, and part of the money went into Nobel Prize Foundation. I was once on the train, somebody sitting next to me in the train say, "What are you doing?" "I'm doing the research on the Nobel Brothers." And this guy happened to be in oil business. And he says, "You know that equipment of Nobel Brothers that was put in 1905, more than 100 years ago, is still in operations. Because it's what? It's oil. It doesn't rust. So some of the pipes that was put in more than 100 years ago are still in operations. What's the book value of that pipe? 0. Would they think that company will give it up for free? It has value. So book value can be 0 for a century, but it still has a market value. Does it make sense? And if you sell this company, they will sell it for a market value, that equipment. Okay, and they will have a gain because the book value is 0. They sell it for positive amount. The tax authority will say 35% of the gain comes to me. Make sense?
Yes.
All right, mixing.
Okay, in case with 25 years, why we can take this 5 millions as residual value, deducted it from 39 millions and depreciate already this amount, but not 39 million?
Again, I follow the American rules. You do not reduce your book value by the salvage value. You take the full price you paid and you depreciate based on that price. You do not make adjustment to the original price. If that's what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I keep correcting students' work when they do this. Okay. So do not reduce the original payment amount by the salvage value, because that's not guaranteed, and accountants will not allow you to do that. At least in the GAAP, the generally accepted accounting principles in the United States. Right? If you have different rules, again, that's a disclosure. You apply the local rules. Filip?
Yeah, I would like to ask a question about there was information in the case that the reason why they are looking for selling the carrier early in 15 years is that the capex expenses which will be then are too high. So as we can see at the 15th year, there's 2,500 expenses. So don't we need to sell it the year before, not in the 15th?
Okay. That's an important point. So remember, to maintain, to have the ship-worthy ship keep operating, we have to invest every 5 years. And the case says 750,000 would need to be invested in year 15 of operations. All right. So depending what your plan is, if you scrap the ship at year 15, obviously it would make no sense to invest 750. So you do not invest 750, you scrap the ship. If you run it for 25 years, obviously you do need to invest 750 and depreciate this over the next 5 years. But then the 25-year option, so it says they need to invest 850. What year is it? In 5 years. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It says 850. Do you invest 850? Absolutely, if you run it for 25 years. But then obviously you don't invest at the end of 25 years. So yes, you have to take this into account depending on your plan. If you scrap it, there is no reason to invest 750. If you keep running it, yes, you need to spend more money, and that has to be taken into account into the cash flows.
So to clarify, for our calculations for 15 years, we just do not include this 750,000, and we like assume that it's at the year end investment, so we sell earlier.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So that's pretty much it. So what I will show you, and I'll share this with you, I'll show you the results, the summary of the 4 options. That's actually an important detail here that I'll need to talk about through. So here's the numbers as they come out. I'm not going to do every single option, but this is the extension to the 25 years. So you see this additional CapEx, 750, 850, and the salvage value. Look at how salvage value is calculated for the 25-year option. Remember, the ship is 39 million. By the end of the 25 years, it's fully depreciated. The book value is 0. The assumption is you take the 5 million, that's what I do, and I adjust it by inflation. And I say, oh, I will salvage it for this much, 6.7 million. You follow it? I'll sell this scrap for this much. But since the book value is 0, and you're getting some, so think about that Nobel Brothers selling that company, it has some value. If you sell it for more than 0, you have a gain now, not a loss. And if you have a gain, you have a tax. You have to pay taxes. So the cash inflow at the end will be the salvage value minus the taxes due. So this will be adjusted for this amount. And it's still a positive cash inflow at the end, but you need to adjust it for the tax. And that will be the summary of 4 options. All right. 15-year with taxes will be negative 7.8 million. Without taxes will be still negative, a smaller negative, but still negative amount. The 25-year actually gives you negative for with taxes, but positive NPV for no taxes case. So that's the last question on the case. Should the company consider running it for 25 years? And given the assumptions, given this research that the company did, it will make sense for the company to buy the ship and run it for 25 years. And obviously, one of the questions there, why don't you see ships on the American flag? Because you have to pay taxes, and that makes it unprofitable. So that's why shipping companies do not run their ships out of American ports. They are not registered in the US. They're registered in all over the world in those jurisdictions that do not apply tax, which makes perfect financial sense. All right. Questions? All right. So
Avigdor,
that's
a small
go ahead.
question. Should we have the same answers as yours? Or if we have some discrepancies, it's okay after correcting mistakes and what we've seen?
Okay, you go into my calculations and say, our calculations were different in this way. And that's
okay.
it. Okay.
Yeah,
So just,
because we were, for example, we were account for like years when there are 366 days, and yeah, so yeah.
all right, you will see, and that's where accountants are different from finance people. We talk about the future. Can it be, I always laugh, and, we hire consultants very often, and they produce this forecast, and they say, all right, 15 years from today, your expense will be $2,500,072.15. And they, really? Are you that precise 15 years from today? So adjusting 365 days, 366 days, yes, this is correct. But does it make a difference?
It does not make sense for accounting.
It does make sense for accounting, because that's, if you do it in the past, remember what accountants do? If your year has 366 days, you will make a mistake if you do not account for that extra date. In finance, you will see, starting today, how many approximations we have. All right. The future is uncertain. Okay. So that precision, one extra day, 15 years from today, it's not required to be that precise. Okay. In the past, absolutely. You have to make sure that your numbers from the past are correct. Okay. So if you have the leap year, 366, it will be correct to make that a correct calculation. In finance, that's where we're getting next. I'm moving into the lecture notes on the cost of capital. We started those lecture notes last week, and you will see, how much, estimates will go into our calculations. So even though we use this mathematical framework, future is uncertain. Keep that in mind. It has to be reasonable. If you do that adjustment for a leap year, extra day, fine. This is not a mistake, obviously, but it's not strictly required. All right. So in your explanation, one-page explanation, say, we made that adjustment, and that would be enough. Okay. Other questions? All right. So let me set it up. So I'm ready to start talking about the cost of capital. So I'll do a quick review what we did last week, and then move into some additional discussion. So cost of capital. All right. So we talked about the hurdle rate. Again, language should be clear. There is a minimum rate that the companies must estimate, and that's your case for next week. All right. So you would need to calculate the cost of capital. And so let me do something here very quickly.
Sorry,
yeah.
we see your presentation like in presentation view, like with marks and so on.
I'm
like
sorry.
Not only slideshow, but also like next slide and some additional text for it.
I think the way it's set up, it's you see just the slide I show you.
No, we have seen like all presentation with
okay.
other...
Before I get into this, there's some kind of side story. I like to connect it to what's going on in the real world. So my point here, I'll go to Wall Street Journal. And before I get into the lecture notes, this is not the recent one. This is a little bit dated. GM used to be the largest car maker in the world. And what they did some years ago, they said, we will exit the European markets. All right. And they operated in Europe under the brand Opel. Okay. They were making those cars and they decided to sell their business. And this kind of demonstrates the reason. Starting in the year 2000, the European operations were losing money. See, it's in the red. All right. You don't have to be positive every year, but if you see more than a decade of negative income, you start thinking. Okay. And their operations were relatively smaller in Europe than their competitors. So they sold their Opel to Peugeot. So the French company purchased that, and they literally gave it up. They got $2 billion from Peugeot for this business, and then they turned around and invested $2 billion in the retirement fund for the employees of the Opel. So they didn't get anything out of this, but they cut the losses. All right. And the point here, and that's kind of the introduction to the case next week. The CEO of GM, Mary Barra, she's still there, that our overall philosophy in every country, every market segment is to earn its cost of capital. All right. And if the company cannot earn the cost of capital, it should stop doing it. Remember, the purpose of a corporation is to generate profit. Okay? And if the company cannot generate sufficient profit, so that's why we call it the hurdle rate. You have to jump over the hurdle. Okay, so that's the idea of figuring out what is the correct discount rate, what is the cost of capital, what's the hurdle rate. I use different terminology, but they mean exactly the same thing. Okay, so that's the direction we will take. So let me share the correct slides. So let me see if that fixes it. I think that should work. Does it?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Very good. So the purpose of this is to determine the minimum, the hurdle that the company must generate in order to satisfy the requirements. And we use this framework, the weighted average cost of capital. That's the kind of the bread and butter what the corporations do. This is our template. So we spent some time last week and this week on the cash flow calculations, the free cash flows. Now we move into the discount rate. All right. And the components of the discount rate, the weighted average cost of capital, it's called weighted average because you determine what's the optimal capital structure, how much company needs to borrow versus issue their own capital, and the proportions are the weights, weight of equity, weight of debt, and cost of equity and the cost of debt. That's a separate calculations. So cost of equity, I already asked you to do the CAPM. So the CAPM formula is right here. So I ask you to calculate this variable. I will review this, your work over the weekend, and we'll see if you need to make any adjustments for the last installment. But the general framework is this, all right? The appropriate discount rate, the hurdle rate, consists of two main parts, the risk-free rate plus the risk premium, okay? For the equity part, this is your CAPM. You have the risk-free rate, that's the foundation, plus the risk premium, and the risk premium is based on these two variables. The beta that measures the risk in relationship to the overall market, and the market risk premium, you know, I'll give you a bit more of an insight there, how this is calculated. But the example I showed you, I think last time, the cost of equity at the moment when I was doing this calculation for Chevron, you take the risk-free rate. Typically, a 10-year treasury rate is the benchmark that we use. You calculate the beta based on a regression. So this is my regression at that time with a reasonable R-square. Remember, 20 to 40% is a reasonable R-square for financial calculations. Your coefficient of X is 1.16. This is your beta, okay? And it tells you that this particular company is somewhat riskier than the overall market. Again, by definition, the S&P, we use S&P returns as a proxy. This is the market. So the beta for the market is defined as a unit. So beta is 1. If your beta is higher than 1, your company is riskier than the overall market. Okay? If it's less than 1, it's less risky than the overall market. That's the interpretation. Okay. Now let's move into the cost of debt. Remember, in this framework, you use CAPM to estimate the expected return on equity. Cost of debt, following the same framework, risk-free rate plus risk premium. You can use CAPM. Some analysts still use CAPM to determine the cost of debt, but most of the practitioners use a somewhat different approach. And that approach is the following. In order of preference, all right? So the best way to estimate the cost of debt is to literally go to the market and look up yield to maturity on the debt. So for Chevron, Chevron is a big company. It borrows money in the market, the capital markets. Their bonds are traded in the market. They are rated, all right, by slightly different rating by Moody's and S&P. But the bonds are traded in the market, and investors are buying and selling those bonds on a daily basis. And there is a yield to maturity, which you can just go to the market and like a share price. What's the market value of the company? You look up share price multiplied by the number of shares. This is your market cap. Same thing for the cost of debt. You look up yield to maturity. That's your cost of debt. You don't need to do any calculations. All right? So what does it tell Chevron, the yield to maturity? It's a 10-year bond at that point. If the company needs to borrow money to invest in their business, they can go to the market, and the market tells the company, we will lend you money at 3.8%. That's the cost of debt. All right? Now, if that is not available, and again, the business universe in the United States is like 40 million businesses. How many are large businesses that are in the position to go directly to the capital market and issue bonds? Fewer than 20,000. All right? But even those large companies, not all of them have bonds that are traded in the market on a daily basis. Or they might not have the long-term bond. Again, we're looking for the long-term borrowing. Because remember, we're talking about something called the capital budgeting. Something that the company will spend. That's the CapEx. That's why it's called the capital expenditure. And they put it on the balance sheet, a long-term asset. So when we took a look at the cost of debt, we look at the long-term cost of debt. And if there is a scenario where the company is rated, okay, but it does not have a long-term debt available, there is no yield to maturity. So what do? You look at the rating, and then you follow this formula, okay? The risk-free rate, you look at the 10-year risk-free rate. If it's in the United States, that's the 10-year treasury. If it's in Europe, look at the 10-year euro rate, and you add the risk premium, or very often this is called the spread over the risk-free rate, okay? And when you see this rating, and as I said, it's slightly different between the Moody's and S&P. They're very, very close. This is the premium. So what do? At the moment when I was doing this, the risk-free rate is 2.8, and you add about 1%. All right? Your risk premium, you end up with 393, which is very close to the actual yield to maturity. All right? So let me see. Oh, that's the old chat. I thought there's somebody asking a question. All right. Fine. So that's the second best. All right.
It was not all chat. It's right now. It's right now how we see it.
Okay. So let me reshare it. Sometimes it switches up. It's still showing up incorrectly. I'm not sure what's going on. All right. I think that should work. Okay. All right. So again, first option, if the yield to maturity is available, go to the market and look it up. So for your company, your individual company, I will give you the source. I'll give you the link to a source that gives you the yield to maturity. So if your company has bonds outstanding, the preferred way, you say on this date, I'm doing this my analysis on this date. Here's the source. Here's the yield to maturity on the company's debt. If that is not available, or the company does not have long-term debt, but is rated, you look up the rating. You look up. I will give you a table. This comes from Professor Damodaran. Okay, I'll give you the latest link, and it will be a table like this. You look up the premium and add that premium to the risk-free rate on the date of your analysis. All right. Again, absolute majority of the business universe would not have their debt rated. Okay, what do you do in that case? Well, something that I ask you to calculate the interest coverage ratio, EBIT divided by the interest expense. All right, you calculate that ratio and you approximate the rating. Okay, so in this case, the interest coverage ratio for Chevron falls in this range, 3 to 4.2. And the rating will be this, which is very close to actually the actual rating for S&P. And you find out what's the risk premium. You follow the same formula. Risk-free rate plus the risk premium, it will give you the cost of debt. So some of you will end up for your company, look up the yield to maturity, that's your cost of debt. If the company is rated but does not have a long-term debt, you follow this route. But many of you will end up using this. So calculate the latest interest coverage ratio. Go to a table like this, and it will. I'll give you the reference. And you calculate the risk premium, add it to the risk-free rate. That's your cost of debt. Okay, so keep this slide for your reference when you do the individual project at the end of the course. All right, and putting it all together, this is your formula. So using CAPM to calculate the expected cost of equity, using this approach, risk-free plus the risk premium, cost of debt. For the cost of debt, use the tax rate adjustment. Again, in the US, a typical tax rate will be about 24-25%. Okay, that's the marginal tax rate in the United States today. And the weights, this is important. Ideally, you should use market value of debt and market value of equity. Okay, and I ask you to calculate the price of the bond in the entry quiz. So you can calculate the price or the present value of all of the bonds of the company. But a quick turnaround is to use the book value of debt. And that's what I do in this particular example. I literally go to the balance sheet. I collect all of the short-term debt and long-term debt data. I sum it up. That's the value of debt. But for the equity, it has to be market value. So on the date of your analysis, look up the share price, find the number of shares outstanding, and calculate the market value of equity. There is no room for the book value here. Okay, calculate the total capital invested and calculate the proportion of debt and proportion of equity. Plug it as your weights, and that will be your weighted average cost of capital calculation. Marco?
I have a question regarding number of shares issued. Is it some way to find the exact number of shares as of today? Because I've used data from second quarter of 2025 financial statements of the company.
All right. In the financial statements that I provide for American companies, the number of shares is listed there. And it's for the end of 2024. You are what? Almost at the end of 2025. So there is a disconnect there. So if you can find a more recent data, you should do it. Again, this is an academic exercise. So if you use the number of shares at the end of 2024, fine. All right. Again, if you do it for professionally, obviously you go to the latest quarterly statement and you find the latest number of shares. For this class,
I meant for the purpose of calculating market value of capital, we use price of shares as of now, but apply number of shares issued, for example, from the latest quarterly reports or even last annual reports, and I think it may be some mismatch. So my question is there some resource where we could find the exact number of shares as of now? For example, Yahoo could track it, or some other agency that's asking.
you can kind of reverse engineer it by doing what? Look at the market cap on Yahoo Finance. Look at the share price. Divide market cap by the share price, and you will see the number of shares they used. But very likely they used the latest quarter. Okay? Because unless you work for the company as an insider, you will not have that information from outside. Okay? And time mismatch is okay. Think about this. What about the balance, the debt balance? You don't have today's debt balance. You still use what? The latest quarter. And that latest quarter might be 3 months away. So you will, by necessity, will have some approximations. And as I said, in finance, that's fine.
What if
so the time mismatch is, kind of expected. Try to minimize it. So do not go back to end of 2024. But even that would be okay if you cannot find the more later data. All right. Metro?
But for this Marco question, what if instead of current market price, we use market price on the date when we have number of shares available?
I would prefer a mismatch rather than stepping back. Okay, so say I'm doing this on today's what, September 18. Your risk-free rate will be as September 18. Okay, your share price should be as of September 18. Some other variables might be off, but that's fine. So that mismatch is okay. So try to find the latest data available, but if the mismatch, time mismatch is okay, is acceptable. Okay, Gleb?
Yeah, but can we use average price for the period?
You shouldn't. Okay, especially given the market fluctuations, it's better to use a particular date, so it's verifiable. So I can go to the market and see what was the price.
Okay.
Anna?
Yeah, a small question about individual project. If you are doing this right now, like this part, then it will be with dates that matches this week, and it won't be the problem later when we will need to estimate something else and numbers are changing.
Again, as I said, timing mismatch is okay, but ideally, the closer you do this to the submission date, the better.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move forward on this, Marco.
So, sorry, one more question, just to finish this topic regarding market value of capital. In the home assignment, we had to calculate and compare for several years with peers. So I've applied an approach to calculate market value, for example, for 2023, as using price per share at year end. And I would like to clarify: is it an acceptable approach, or is there should be some other?
That's pretty reasonable. Just one comment here. Remember, the fiscal year can be different, not December 31st. So if you do Microsoft and their end of the fiscal year is June 30th, so it's better to use the price on June 30th, not December 31st.
Yes, thank you for your answer.
Make sense? All right. And again, those are the technical details. I'm not going to collect your valuation and sell it to somebody. So don't worry about making mistakes or being inconsistent. So that's fine. That's a learning process. Okay. All right. Let's do something here. And let's talk a little bit about the capital asset pricing model, how well it works, how not well. So it was developed in 1960s. Okay, people who developed this model received Nobel Prizes in economics. So it's not a trivial matter. All right, it was a deep discovery that allowed practitioners to apply this framework, and the framework is: you have the risk-free rate plus the risk premium. And what the data does, it gives you an opportunity to measure that risk. So again, my research was in the history of finance, and I was concentrating on London Stock Exchange in the 19th century. And the investors in the 19th century knew that the expected return depends on risk. They just didn't have the machinery, the academic background to figure out that risk premium. That's what appeared in 1960s with a capital asset pricing model. All right, but again, it keeps switching up. So on my terminals. This concept was known, a long time, but CAPM was developed in 1960s. And I don't know if you follow how the academia works. Some people concentrate on theory. They develop theoretical framework, but many people then take this theoretical framework and test it empirically. All right, and the Ford Foundation gave a big grant to Chicago University in 1960s to develop the databases that can be used to empirically test the CAPM. And what happened, it turned out to be that the model does not work very well. In some cases, it really doesn't work. Okay, they try to test it, and based on historical data, it just doesn't show that it's a good model. But for some reason, we're still teaching this, and practitioners are still using it. There were a lot of other models prepared, like the arbitrage pricing model. When I was in school, that was part of the corporate finance textbook. There was a chapter on APM. Multi-factor model. Some of you actually mentioned the Fama and French model. Anybody have heard about Fama and French? All right. Fama received a Nobel Prize in economics for developing his approach. Ken French was my teacher in finance class. He was at Yale at that time when I was in the MBA program, and he was joking that my first name is not Fama because the papers were published Fama in French. So people were thinking that's his first name, Fama, and French is just a last name. He's Ken French. So that's the kind of insider joke. but they published a multi-factor model. So they have multiple betas, so to speak. And what happened, why do we still use CAPM? Those other models, more sophisticated, more complex models, do not work any better than one variable model with one beta. Okay, if you test it on the empirical data, they're very, very similar. That's why practitioners avoid complexity and they say CAPM is good enough. All right, so that's the framework we still use. We don't have a better one. If you come up with a better one, you will get a Nobel Prize. All right, so keep that in mind. Now, how do we work with a CAPM? So obviously the inputs are the risk-free rate. Okay, different currency, different countries will require a different risk-free rate. All right. Now, other variables. So again, the plugin, I might come back to this next week, how the interest rates are impacted. And did you follow the news yesterday? What happened to the news? What happened to the interest rates? They changed yesterday, all right? So
Yep.
I'm not going to do a detour talking about the Federal Reserve, a whole politics of this. I did it in a different school in Kiev last week. So I might come back to this discussion next week when we do the case on cost of capital. But the inputs are risk-free rate, typically a 10-year rate at which the government borrows money. Okay. The beta, the problem with the beta in this framework, it's one variable that measures the risk. And remember, I asked you to calculate the 95% confidence. So I'll see how you manage that. There is a range. So the beta can reasonably be within fairly large range. So what do you do? And especially if you have R square close to 0, your model is not very well, calibrated, obviously. So what do you do? How do you deal with this particular issue that your beta could be pretty in a wide range? All right, and that's in some of the programs. What I do, and I borrowed this from my daughter in one of her games. When I teach a class in person, I bring a bag of this thing. You see what that is? Okay, it's a die. Okay, a 6-side die. All right, and what I do, I give one die to each student and ask them to do the following: throw it 5 times and record what you got. All right. And then calculate the average of just 5 throws. And I will collect those averages from, let's say we have, I don't know how many students we have, 20, 25. So let's say even 20. If I collect 20 averages and I do it in Excel and calculate the average of the averages, what number do I get?
3.5.
Why? You're right.
It's just math, like, because average between 6 and 1, like largest and lowest number of die.
So let's say you throw 5 times. You throw a few 6s and a 5. Your average will be more than 3.5. If you throw a couple of 1s and 2s, your average will be below 3.5. 3.5 comes from where? 1 with probability of 1/6 plus 2 with probability of 1/6 and so on. So the theoretical average of the throw of a die is 3.5. It's just mathematics. All right, that's a correct statement. All right, what's my average of the averages? Even though each individual average can be very different from 3.5. Mine would be very close to what? To 3.5. And the reason for that, because even though I have only 5 throws, 20 people will have what? 100 throws. So my average will come very close to theoretical average. So why did I tell you this story? And that's what you will do for your individual company analysis. You collect data for several companies. Okay? So each individual regression will have just one set of numbers from the industry. All right? And when you have several companies, and that's the, I'll show you the way it works in this example. So again, I'll switch to Excel file in this case. All right. And what we do, we'll use a formula. Again, I'll go over the formula next week, give you the assumptions, but something that comes important when you think about the risk, because what's the beta? The beta reflects the risk of the business. And an important consideration is the amount of debt that the company has. Different companies have different amount of debt. And what the debt does, it changes the risk profile of a business. So think about this. One company has a lot of debt, and the other company in the same industry that doing the same thing has little debt. Which company is riskier? One with debt, because of what? They have to make fixed payments. And after cash flows fluctuate, the fixed amount of debt will change the cash flow much more dramatically. And remember how we define risk in finance. The fluctuation of the of the company's business. So the company with debt, their cash flow will fluctuate a lot more. So the companies with debt will be riskier. So you cannot directly compare the betas from the regressions because they reflect a different amount of debt. But fundamentally, the business is the same if the company is in the same industry. Okay? So what do we need to do? We need to do something called the unlevering betas. All right. And the feature of the beta is the following. It's weighted average of the betas within components of the business. All right. So you have the beta of debt, you have the beta of equity. We assume that the beta of debt is 0. So the more debt you have, the equity becomes riskier. Right. But the business, the asset side of the business, the unlevered, so to speak, the fundamental risk is similar across businesses in the same industry. So what we will do, and I'll show you this example, and that's what I will ask you to do for the case, is the following. You collect your betas. So regression betas are called the levered betas. All right. And then you would need to follow a formula to unlever the beta, to calculate the asset betas. And this is the formula. You take levered beta, divide by this expression. And again, I will explain where that numbers come from, what's the intuition when we go through the case. It requires some additional discussion. But purely mechanically, you collect the levered betas from the industry. You have a sample of companies. You follow this formula. You divide it by 1 plus 1 minus t d to e ratio, debt to equity ratio. So if you are given, so this is from the balance sheet, you have the equity, you divide debt by equity to calculate this particular ratio. And what I will do then, I'll follow this formula to unlever each of the individual betas. Then I compare those betas across the industries. They're now not impacted by the amount of leverage. This is purely the business risk. All right. And then, and I give you the steps. So this is something that you will do for your final project. So we'll talk more about this next week. Then we'll take the industry beta, and that's what gives me the insight, this process. and I re-lever with a particular company debt to equity ratio, and that will give me the estimate based on a sample of companies rather than one regression company. Okay, in that way, so this is a very brief outline. I'll post this Excel. This allows you to deal with issues like R square is 0. Okay, for your particular company, there is no correlation with the market. So you go to Yahoo Finance, you select a sample of companies for your industry, you collect the data there. You don't need to do a regression for each company. You just take it from the financial sources, and then you follow through this process of unlevering betas and then re-levering for your particular company capital structure. And that gives you something called the bottom-up beta. You collect sample and you build your beta from the bottom up. Regression beta is called the top-down. You collect the returns, you run a regression, it's a one estimate. So going back to the DAI, instead of one company as estimated the beta, you will have multiple companies. You will have a better view, better statistical estimate of the beta for your company. So that's the idea behind doing this exercise. Okay. One more comment before I get to the questions. Again, the overall beta in the company is the weighted average betas of each individual component of the company's business. All right. Where the weights are coming from? Typically, you use revenue of each business. For the case next week, it's better to use net income of the total company and use the net income of each individual component of the business as the weights, because revenues are very misleading in this particular case, and I'll explain why. Okay, so for your calculations next week, read the case, try to answer the questions as best as you can. All right, I'll come back to a beta discussion in much more details, but that's the process. The bottom-up beta, you collect a sample of betas. Those are levered betas, equity betas coming from regressions. You unlever them with the debt to equity ratio following that formula. You calculate unlevered beta and then re-lever for your particular company capital structure. So that's the process which will be a more sophisticated, more practical approach to estimating the risk of the business. All right. That's pretty much it. So let me answer the questions. So I'm done with the lecture for today. Tatiana?
Yes, thank you. I have a few questions regarding beta. So starting with, I just wanted to understand unlevered and re-levered beta. So what is the like rationale behind that? If we shouldn't account for, well, we should extract the leverage from there because it's simpler to compare the two other companies, right? Because like debt is making it's not a pure result to use to other companies to compare, or what is the motivation behind that?
Again, that's the whole discussion connected to the case next week. The idea is the more debt you have as a company, the riskier the company becomes. The more likely the company to go bankrupt because it's not able to pay their debt. If the company does not have any debt, so the levered and unlevered beta are exactly the same. They're not impacted by the debt. But as soon as you start adding debt, you make your equity riskier because the company becomes riskier with more debt. Again, this is kind of the general framework. I'll add a lot more to this next week.
Oh, okay. So just to a bit more understanding of that. So we unlevering the beta because well, will the debt be used somewhere else? Because from my understanding, this risk should be accounted in when well assessing the company, isn't it?
Okay. So the point of unlevering using that formula is to calculate the risk of the beta of the what's called the beta of the assets. When I say beta of the assets and unlevered beta, that's the same thing. Okay.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to determine the natural risk of the business without impact of the debt. So that's the
Makes sense.
idea in the first step, because you cannot do regressions for 5 companies, and each company has a different debt structure. So that debt impacts different companies in a different way. So you cannot directly compare levered or equity betas. You have to put them into the unlevered position first, and then do this comparison.
Okay, super, thank you.
All
And next question is regarding how to get those betas. So it's basically regression, following regression somewhat.
Again, I will not ask you to do 5 different regressions. I will tell, go to Yahoo Finance and just look it up and put it in the table.
Mm, okay. And just one more, it's more related to actual work. How if we have to estimate some like an event study and sort of I need to get the beta there. So the question is, I've seen those values in Yahoo Finance and other sources where they get like 90 days or 100 days beta. Can I get that value, or should I better make an estimation myself on each date point for it to be more accurate, or it's okay to use like this given range beta in a
Well,
given?
again, you want to do it yourself, be my guest. You don't have unlimited time, obviously, to work on the project. So if you use the data from any sources like Yahoo Finance, be consistent, because Yahoo uses 60 months data. Okay, so if you collect 5 different datas, collect all of them from Yahoo Finance. They use the same consistent approach. If any of you have Bloomberg Terminal, they have weekly data, so collect all of them from Bloomberg. So as long as you're consistent, you don't need to do individual regressions.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, Anastasia.
Thank you. I have a question about the betas that you were showing the formula for. And in one of these cells, one of the formulas was multiplied by debt divided by equity.
Mhm.
I have a question. My company has negative equity. How do I work with that? Like, because it would make the debt divided by equity negative, and then the whole thing becomes negative.
All right. An important comment. Can a company has negative equity?
No, it cannot.
So remember, in finance, for the most part, we use market value. Market value cannot be negative. Because what does it mean logically? What does it mean to have negative equity? That means equity holders owe money to the company. And remember, you can lose your investment, but it cannot go below 0. So book value can be negative. So on the financial statements, you might see negative values. We can talk about this. That's an accounting thing. Market value is positive. If it's negative, the company is bankrupt. It does not operate. So make sure it's clear that for that calculation, you use market value of equity, not book.
And then a follow-up to this question. So when in our individual assignments were calculating return on equity, we were also supposed to use the market value there as well.
You see, it becomes a bit complex. It is a book value. For the ROE, it's a book value. It's an accounting term. It's not a financial term. We will talk about something called the economic value added next time, when we do use the market returns. Okay, so that's will come back. So does it answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, Philippe?
Thank you.
Yeah, Professor, I would like to ask the question about this one pager on the group project which we did today. So where should we post it or send to you via email, and what's the time frame and the deadline?
Yeah, I will post the announcement obviously once a week. I try not to bother you too much with my announcements. It will be in the announcement, but the requirements are the following. For all remaining cases, one person from the group, CC everybody else in the group, send me an email with that one pager. Okay, by the end of Saturday, Kyiv time. So when I wake up on Saturday, I have your report. So you have, Friday, Saturday to get together, connect, and create that one-page summary. By the end of Saturday, I should have it by email. One person per group. So do not send me individual summaries. That's not required. Any other questions, clarifications?
Is end of day 23:59 Kyiv time or like end of work day? When's the deadline?
Well, you start getting into some Greenwich time, no, the Kyiv time. All right, 23:59.
Oh.
All right, that would be the end of Saturday.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Any clarifications? That's your chance to clarify anything you need to clarify. And again, if you forgot something, send me an email. If you need to talk to me, a couple of students reached out and we met over Zoom. That's perfectly fine. All right. Obviously, we need to coordinate the timing. You were 10 hours ahead of me, but it's perfectly fine. Reach out as an individual or as a group. You don't have individual assignment for next week, but you do have a group. So if you would like to meet as a group, send me an email. We'll set up some time as a group. All right, I'm done. 10 minutes ago. But if any questions, obviously come up with questions. If not, I'll see you next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Have a
you,
nice
goodbye.
day.
Maybe just by any chance your usual data source came online?
You know what? It's very odd. It did come back online, but there is no company, General Dynamics there. I was very surprised. I looked different ways. So typically you put the ticker and it comes up. So it's actually come from Wharton. Wharton is the kind of the best finance school. I have access to their database, and for whatever reason, let me double check. Maybe that was over the weekend and they didn't. The system didn't work or something, but JD did not come up. So let me hold on a second. We'll double check.
It's quite unusual because, well, this is not a new company.
Because I looked up everything under letter G, and GE comes up, but General Dynamics doesn't. So let me see. GD. Nope. No, there's a lot of companies on G, but the General Dynamics, for whatever reason, does not come up. So if you can do with the data I send you or your own data, that will be okay.
Okay. Then probably a small joke.
That's the first time I see that. It's a pretty complete data set, so I'm a little surprised.
Mhm. When you was talking about like when we use less days for a year, etc., and we make a lot of assumption and approximations in the future, this remind me of one joke from life. I was studying bachelor in KP in system engineering, and the guys told me there was one guy who was making calculations and the calculations didn't come up. So he assumed P to be equal 5.
Okay.
And they made a bet. If this work out, nobody fail him on diploma. The guys would buy him a cage of champagne. And actually nobody noticed that.
All right. That's a funny thing. Yeah, in finance, actually, it's much more relaxed. Again, we'll go through this estimates. You'll see how much room there.
Okay, thank you. Have a nice evening. Goodbye.
Okay.